we go. And of course, we worked on our chandelier, right? We kind of started that up. So I'm going to click on it. And that's kind of where we're at with the chandelier, right? We kind of explored making these shapes here. Now, one of the things I wanted to do really quickly is I wanted to show you how to make kind of like a, maybe if you will, like a rope, right? But it's also great for pipes, hoses, right? It's a curve, right? It's based on the curve stuff we've actually already done some of. So I'm actually going to pick probably maybe the x-axis. Remember this little view compass up here? It's kind of a great way to kind of just click on those, and it puts you right in the side view. You can click on it again, and it switches to the other side. And of course, what I could do is I could go to Add. Make sure you're in Object Mode, though, for Object Mode. Add, Curve, right? NURBS curve. We've done this before, right? We'll actually see it in our review lecture later today because this is how we do our column, right? Remember, in Object Mode, you can go to Add Curve, NURBS curve. Actually, I'm going to rotate this really quick, too, because you'll see when it creates the curve, it's kind of on its side here, right? Or kind of flat. Remember, Alt-Left, right? Alt-Left mouse button will rotate your camera, and it automatically pops you out of whatever kind of orthographic view you're in, right? So there's our curve. I can hit W for, or sorry, not W, but 1 for vertex, right? And you notice it automatically converts that to all the vertices being selected. But remember, there is select all, right? And that'll work for points. And I'm going to hit E for rotate, right? We've been seeing this a bunch lately, too. E for rotate. And if I start to rotate on, say, the green handle, let me see what I got here. Oh, my normal stuff's still on, right? I did that the other day. So switch these back to global and median point, right? Because we kind of did that last time on the chandelier. So I'll switch those back. Usually your global and median are good kind of defaults to have. And then I'll left-click drag on that green to kind of rotate it a little bit. Remember, your rotate option will pop up here at the bottom now, right? The bottom left corner. So I can click on that. And I can go to angle and type in 90. There we go. And now that's properly on its side. Now, it can often be easy to work with these curves from, like we said, kind of an orthographic view, but technically you don't have to, but it's a little easier. So I'll go back up here and I'll click on the X. And remember, with the Move tool on, I can maybe go to my drag for the Move tool and select box on for it temporarily. And that way I can just left-click drag a box and it selects that vertex. Now, middle mouse button is your view move, of course, but also that white circle is. I can move that up. I could left-click drag over these two, right? Remember, the Move tool's on, but I did switch my drag to select box. So when I left-click drag, it makes a box, and whatever vertices are inside that box get selected. I could move those over here a bit. Maybe move that one down. You see, I can just kind of left-click drag to get these in place a little better. Remember, Control E will extrude, and then you just middle mouse click drag to extrude it out. A little bit, right? But it is right there. I can even go down to this one and extrude that. And now we can see we've got some points for our curve that we can adjust it for a little bit more, right? So I can just kind of left-click drag a box, middle mouse click. If I hit Q to go back to, or 4 to go back to object mode, you can see there's my curve, right? I can always go back to 1 for vertex. Select all. If I want, I can move this up a little bit more altogether. But there's our curve, right? Remember, Alt left click drag will rotate this. So I can go back to my regular perspective mode. But we know how to work with curves, right? We've seen it a couple times. We did it on our column. If you want to subdivide points, you can. But remember, there's this green curve right here, right? So if we go to our properties menu on the side, we have our blue wrench for modifiers, but we also have right down here this green curve. It's towards the bottom. It's the only green icon here. If we click on this, that brings up some of the curve options. Now, one of the things that's in here is the geometry menu, right? The geometry menu. So, this is the first time we're doing it. It's more to get you guys exposed to it. I'll post a video, of course. We'll do more review lecture on this. But you just go to that green little curve feature, which we've seen a little bit on our column also. We'll see a little more in review lecture again today, of course. But if you open up geometry, there's a section called bevel. Now we're going to use round, but you could do profile and even use objects. It's quite cool, but for us, we're just going to use the default round. I do want to give it some bevel depth. And the moment I start to give it bevel depth, you see how it actually kind of creates basically a pipe or a hose or a rope. That's cool, isn't it? Right? That's quite neat. So that's one of those cool things that we can actually do with this. Now, just to point this out a little bit more, if I go to 1 for vertex mode again, I can left-click drag, and I can move this vertex in. Your up arrow for more or less works on curves. I can bring those in a little bit more. But here's one of the cool things you could do with this. If I right-click, it brings up my curve context menu, right? One of the options in there is radius. If I click on radius, I can actually make that part of the curve thicker, right? So if I want to make part of my curve a bit thicker in an area, like this, I could do that. So this is one of those really, really cool things that you could actually do with this curve feature. You can just kind of adjust the curve a little bit more if I want to. But maybe I want this one to be a little thicker, right? Select a single vertex, right-click. Brings up the curve context menu. That's where subdivide is if you want to add more vertices in between vertices that already exist, right? But I can do radius. In fact, if you want to twist, you could actually do tilt. I don't need to tilt on this one, but it's really neat that you can actually select certain vertices on the curve and use radius to make that section of the curve thicker. And you guys don't have to do this on yours if you don't want to, but I just want to make sure you know it's an option. But you can also twist. So when you actually kind of look at the fact that there's radius and twist as part of our context menu curve stuff for points, that's really, really cool, right? That's really cool. So at that point, that's basically what we want, right? If I want, I could turn the resolution for the this bevel down here, right? So the resolution here is going to control the edge loops around that direction, right? And of course, the resolution preview up here controls the resolution kind of along that direction. So very much, this always controls kind of the resolution along one of the directions, whether it's on the screw modifier or just the curve by itself with bevel. But the bevel has its own little resolution control that kind of controls around this direction. So I turn that one down and that one down. And if you want to play with the depth a little bit more, still you can, right? But that's that geometry section bevel. And it's a really neat feature. Now, of course, if I go to 4 for object mode, I can right-click, and I can go convert to mesh, and now that's a polygon mesh. But that's really neat that you can kind of do that with your curves, right? That making things like hoses and pipes is quite brilliant in Blender, actually, right? And you even have things like radius and tilt. I'm not requiring you guys to use radius and tilt on yours, but I want to make sure you knew they were there. It's kind of cool. But that's how we can make a pipe or a hose. Now, I also want to actually copy this geometry around, right? But I want to copy it kind of in a circular pattern. This is where that spin duplicate comes in. Technically, you could use the array modifier, but then you have to kind of, like, the array modifier isn't really great or easy to do for radial arrays, I found. Technically, you do it, but you have to create a pivot. It's kind of an area that I'd like to see Blender maybe improve upon a little bit. Blender's so amazing most of the time, but there's occasionally areas where I'm like, So I tend to like to just use a bit of spin duplicate. You won't have it as a modifier, but it's pretty easy to use. So in this case, I'm going to go to 3 for face mode, right? Go to face selection, right? So edit modes. I can go to select all, and you will see that there is, as part of our modeling tools, way down here, there's a tool called spin. Now, we don't want to specifically use spin. What we could do is we could left-click on it, right? So remember, any tool that's got a little triangle in the bottom right corner, if you hold down left mouse button on it, it brings up more options. So I want to do spin duplicates, not spin. So if you just go down to here, lower down, hold down your left mouse button on the spin tool, and it brings up this option menu, spin duplicates. And what this does is if I left-click drag on this kind of, see this blue handles here, the pluses? If I left-click drag on that, you see how it can start to copy this out? Now that's not exactly what I want quite yet, But you'll notice there's now a spin options box available down here, right? We notice the bottom left corner always has little options for it. So I'm going to click on that to open up spin. And one, I want to set my angle to 360, right, for a full circle, 360 degrees. But I also want to tell it to use, I'm going to do it one more time. There we go. Tell that to be 360. There we go. Tell it to use duplicates, right? So you want it to use duplicates so it doesn't kind of do that merging thing there. You'll tell the angle to be 360 degrees, and then we can actually turn our steps down, and you see how it gives us less ropes? You see how it's kind of doing it in a circular pattern? We're going to see this again, particularly with cursor, so we can do it at weird angles on our spaceship. But we're getting it introduced here. In this case, I think maybe 6 will work great. You'll often find the originals still there, so I'll just kind of hit delete faces. And there we go, we've got ropes. Now, just to practice the spin duplicate one more time, I'm going to create a little glow globe to kind of be our candles on the ends of the chandelier. So I'm going to go to object mode, right? 4 for object mode. I'm going to go to add mesh, UV sphere. I probably don't need it to be quite this dense. Actually, I think that'll work. If you want to, though, you'll have UV sphere options here, and you can make it a little less dense. Maybe like do it like, you know, maybe 24 by 24. There we go. And then, of course, I can go to 3 for face mode, W for move, and I can just kind of move this into position. R for scale, right? Remember, move and scale are right here. Remember, if you left-click drag on that white circle, that'll make it smaller. And I can just kind of move it into position. I'm just going to eyeball it. Blender has some pretty cool snapping tools, but I don't want to have too many new things for you guys to see. I'm just going to kind of roughly line it up there. Pretty good eyeballing. And then, of course, you know, we're in face mode already. And we know that we did kind of 12 total for these kind of spokes, right? Because it was 24 total. So I can go right back to spin duplicate for this one. Right? So remember, that's right here. Hold down left mouse button to make sure it's spin duplicate. Then I can just left-click drag on that blue handle to move it around. Remember, the spin options are available down here now, so open that up. Type in your angle to be 360 degrees, a full circle. But also turn this up to be 12, right? Your number of steps. So that way it'll line up with all of those. And usually I tell it to use duplicates also. That will mean you probably have an original here, so delete faces. And now we have our chandelier. Of course, remember we could right-click shade smooth. And I could click on that one, right-click shade smooth. And there's our chandelier. Doesn't have to be the most intricate thing ever, but it's kind of the idea is to show you how to do pipes, hoses, ropes, right, with the bevel feature of curves. Also, it's to show you spin duplicate so that you can kind of see how you can copy things in a circle, right? All right, so that'll be it for that one.